Hello and welcome back to another episode of Searching in San Diego. This is Doug Foresta, and I'm really excited to have back with me Maxine Suka. She is the Director of Workforce Operations for the San Diego Career Centers. Maxine, welcome back. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Doug. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. So, yeah, our last conversation was about parenting. And after we finished that conversation, I think we both said, boy, there's this whole other episode that we could have, this whole other conversation about what does it mean to be a leader during a pandemic and during times of disruption. And maybe just start with, I remember you were telling me a story about how you remember what you were doing this time last year. And what you were doing, you heard somebody talk to you about this virus that was coming out of China.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you never thought, much like I did, you never thought it was going to end up here, right?
No, I didn't at all. And it's so funny. So going back to the story that you're referencing, but this time last year, I had family members visit me from Hawaii. And I remembered specifically one of our conversations, my uncle started talking about this virus outbreak that happened in China. And this was in December, this time last year. And I remembered being very dismissive of the whole conversation. I was just like, well, yeah, like you that's why you just don't watch too much of that information, on the news, or, I'm pretty sure they'll figure out something and they'll have it under control, eventually. And primarily the conversation started coming up because we had plans to be traveling in January, and it was more of a precautionary kind of conversation that we were having. And what did I do in January? I jumped on a plane. So I went on a plane. I went on a plane and I went up to Washington State, where they had the first outbreak of coronavirus. And it was pretty crazy, because by the time I got back, I do remember, like, that was one of the first things that I heard kind of all over the news, was in this one of these vicinities where they care for elderly individuals up in Washington. That is exactly where they started to see at least 13 individuals start passing away from this particular virus that
I
had
remember
spread,
that.
right? That had spread from travel, primarily international travel. And so in my referencing from this time last year, and going back to just our topic of discussion on how do you prepare for these things, like how do you lead a workforce development industry, let alone like people in your organization, no matter how big or small, in a pandemic where it just kind of sort of hit you at the beginning of this year. So that we reference conversations that we've been having. Nobody really knew exactly what was going on. And I just remembered that back in March, in fact, I was out of the office. I was out of the office, and I just remembered getting a phone call that said, we're shutting down. Like, California is going to be shutting down, and we need to be able to, start transferring people so that they can start teleworking. And I'm processing all of this information.
Yeah.
And first, I'm just like, why are we shutting down? What is going on? How serious is this pandemic? And just between March to, I want to say, like 3 months, between like March to like the May or June timeframe, in that specific block of time, we really thought that, oh, this will just pass. Like, we'll just give it some time and just let it pass.
Yeah.
And that didn't, it was really something where you can't fully prepare for. Like, you can only really focus on one day at a time, and really just try to pave a path that where it would make sense for, like, just your employees in general, where their health and safety is the primary focus, because they're, as a business, and as we're operating, any organization that is operating, you have to balance a variety of different things. So one, you cannot operate your business without your employees, and your employees are, in fact, your number one customer.
Yeah.
But in a situation like the pandemic, it's really, I don't have all the answers to say, like, this is what we do to prepare for a pandemic and a global crisis when it hits, when you need
Yeah.
to, um, start steering things around in your organization. But I will say that one of the things that has helped us a great amount, a great deal and a great amount, is really just the fact that we're able to show ourselves a little bit of grace every single day. So like that sounds very cliche, but it is very true, because everyone, they're experiencing a variety of different things. This is one of the highest unemployment rates that we have seen so far. Like we were on the up and up really over the past years, like really trying to make to find sustainable work for a lot of families, really starting to strategize on like on really building and bridging the gap between folks who are unskilled and versus folks who are underemployed. So we were really, moving in a direction where we would be able to really increase increase the amount of hope that we can provide to some of these families in our local area here in San Diego. And with the pandemic that had happened, and just a lot of uncertainties in operations, in what does this mean for the future of our operations, of our service delivery, and ultimately, how can we still be a guiding hope and provide these really important and vital services that our clientele, our community needs. People need to work. They need to be able to work to sustain themselves and their family in the economy and in the world that we live in. And so it's, very important for us to show ourselves a little bit of grace every single day, and to be understanding. Sometimes as we're managing, there are a lot of questions that I get directly from my team that quite frankly, I don't know the answer to. And, it really does take a lot of minds to work together to really produce not just a positive outcome, but a path forward. That there might be sometimes a little bit of compromise here and there, but it's really to find the way that we need to move forward.
What are some of those questions, Maxine, that you get
Yeah.
what are some of those questions? I'm curious.
Yeah. So some of the questions are like, if there is we started shifting our phased reopening plan. So at one point in time, we were full-time teleworking. And then there are some vital services that we need to be able to provide to our customers. So for example, supportive services, right? So we are currently operating a grant. In one of our podcasts on the series, Silvio Contreras was actually talking about the UCII, so the underserved COVID impacted individuals grant that we're offering to people. And so those are just some of the services that I'm referencing that you in person need to be in the office to issue and distribute some of these services. So it's those, we encouraged everyone, obviously, to be able to telework to the full extent possible, but we are considered essential workers. So
Right.
there are opportunities and there are instances where we will need to actually physically be in the office to accommodate some of these essential duties. So, sometimes, and it really truly depended on the time frame of when the severity of the pandemic hit. So there were moments, there were some months where the numbers were increasing, then there were some months where they were decreasing. It kind of depended on exactly what the CDC data was, what the actual COVID data was. It really depended on a daily and weekly time frame. So some of the questions that folks would ask me directly were, do we cease all in-person services, which would include some of these essential duties as far as like issuing out some of these, services to our customers? Do we postpone that? Do we wait until, the currently stay-at-home order is lifted before we start, providing these services out? And so there's, the opportunity for us to really kind of coordinate on our end and figure out essentially like, how can we continue to keep our employees safe and healthy? That's, that continues to remain our priority, and balancing that out also with our operations and the expectations of our contractual duties for our business, And at the same time, balancing that out with the COVID data that's currently being released on a daily and weekly basis, that is ever changing. So it's like, you can have a plan for the week, you can have a plan for the month,
Right.
but you
Right.
have to really show yourself some grace and be flexible, because I can speak specifically for myself as a type A OCD planner. These things don't usually go over so smoothly. So, we really need to be able to be very flexible, be very understanding, patient, and all of that. I would just say is just tied up to my previous comments before, in just showing yourself a little bit of grace. Like, this is an unprecedented time for a lot of people, and not everybody has the answers, and if they do, it might not even be the right one, but we need to be able
Yeah.
to kind of figure it out collectively and together. So when they really say that we're in this together, that is literally and figuratively true.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Right. It's, yeah, I mean, it's, I think part of what I hear in there too is your willingness and ability to be transparent as a leader,
Yes.
because
Yes.
there are leaders who want to feel like they have all the answers, and they kind of lead people on to feel like, well, I have all the answers, right?
Hmm.
But the reality is that, like in this, no one has, I mean, anybody who promises us, unless there's, if you're if you're one of those fortune tellers out there and you're watching this, please contact me, because I'd like to know how it all ends. But
Exactly. Can you foreshadow something? Can you just drop me some hints here and there so I can
exactly.
at least prepare?
But the reality is you don't have to have all the answers to be a leader. I think, like you said, your willingness to be transparent and to say, we'll figure this out together. We have to be nimble. I think it does really point out, I'm so impressed by everything that, when the pandemic started, I was doing. Obviously, I was doing all these episodes about all of the things that you're offering. And, you really, I mean, at least from the outside, you really didn't miss a beat. And I know you can't afford to, because people's lives and livelihoods are on the line.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. And that just it really just goes to show also just the cohesiveness of the group altogether. I'm very, very proud of our team because, like you mentioned, not skipping and not missing a beat, we do have really strong individuals that understand and they know that the services that we're providing is really essential, and our
Yeah.
community really needs it, especially in this time frame. Like, you can't just hit the stop and pause button for anything really, and just kind of
Yeah.
bypass and wait until the pandemic kind of settles down, and then we pick up and start doing
Yeah.
what we would quote unquote normally do. So, I definitely give big kudos to our team for putting together, amazing virtual services that we're able to provide, for the platform that we have here to continue to message out exactly what are these services, how can people tap into them, and specifically for what we're discussing today is, hopefully it'll encourage people where, we recognize and see and experience full well exactly what individuals are going through. I have firsthand knowledge of exactly, folks who have experienced it, have gone through it. I have, been myself the one dropping off, things on the curbside for folks
Yeah.
who have been tested positive, and it's been very challenging, like, and draining emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, spiritually, physically, you name it. But
Yeah.
I think it's really, like you mentioned earlier, the ability to be very transparent, to be nimble, and quite honestly, in the industry that we're in, and this is really a moment of reflection too for a lot of leaders and a lot of people, where, are you really doing what you in fact are passionate about and what you actually really love to do?
Yeah.
Because the not only does the character of an individual show when situations are very pressing and circumstances are hard, but I think that's one of the things that I've come to learn, at least about myself over the years, and why I've stayed in this industry for so long is, this has been my niche. Like, this is my passion, to really serve
Yeah.
individuals in this industry. And I've been very fortunate to be working with a really great team of individuals that share the same vision, that share that same passion to be transparent, to be nimble, and to really serve. And even if it's touching one person or one family at a time, there is a positive impact in the community. So, sometimes we really want to be able to see the big picture. Right now, everyone wants to be able to fast forward all of these things and
I
see
know.
when we get to the very end of the pandemic. But in my previous theme that I've been mentioning earlier is, when you show yourself some grace in all of that, you'll be able to really be grateful for all of the different instances and different circumstances, whether they're good and bad. And the way that you kind of cope with some of these things it plays a big factor in it as well. So we're not being dismissive, we're not being insensitive, but at the same time, it has really shaped us as a people and as a community on how do we actually work together to get past situations such as COVID, such as this pandemic, and try to do it collectively together.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you. That was so beautifully said. I don't think I've heard anyone say anything quite like that, just right on the spot like that. That was really great, Maxine. I really appreciate it. I mean, with that, I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure when this is done, you'll look back at lessons learned, but do you think that, you kind of alluded to this a little bit before, but do you think that this experience has shaped you in a leader in any ways? Like, I'm curious about that.
It definitely has, because we've been, and for myself, I've just always been on the go.
Yeah.
So just constantly on the go, and just I think just the way that our society has been is just very fast paced, and so I think with the pandemic that is currently happening, and with the amount of shifting that we've had to do, sometimes it's much quicker than others. Some required a little bit more strategy before you started doing like this major shift in the operations and service delivery. But I would say overall, it really has provided a very different perspective. And by different, it's a good thing, because it really gives you those moments of pause. I think I mentioned this in the last episode is, as a parent and as you're, parenting during the pandemic, sometimes you kind of wish you could just press a pause button every now and then, especially if you're parenting children that are under 6. If
Yes.
you have two under 6, it's a very different story. I'm like, where's the pause button? I need to
Yeah.
press it constantly. But on top of parenting and on top of working, it really shapes you as a person. I think that's kind of one of the in reflections of 2020. I think there are a lot of people that have a variety of different opinions, which are more than welcome. But I think the perspective that I'd like to have for 2020, and specifically with this pandemic, is really it provided me a perspective of really pause and the ability to just be very grateful. There are individuals who never made it through, and who could
Yeah.
not, no matter what anybody could do to help them make it through some of these very difficult and trying times, whether it's directly through the pandemic, whether it's just all of the different circumstances that kind of came along with the pandemic. And so we don't want to hyper focus on just one area, because there are multiple facets and multiple areas that many people have been really impacted upon. And for me, this hit really close to home when I had immediate family members just within my smaller circle that had tested positive for COVID. And it almost became like a stigma where, at one point in time, it's like everyone was just kind of hands off. And I'm like, this is the moment when people really need our help, and so you need to be able to, really reevaluate yourself as an individual. That's, kind of some of the reflections that this whole thing has really done for me this year, is reevaluate yourself as an individual, really stay away from the stigmas, because, you should be able to balance out and figure out how can you continue to remain safe and healthy, but extend a lending hand to those who really, really could use it.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of creativity, I really think, has come into play this year, with not just virtual services, but just the ability to drop off groceries on the curbside, to just call and say, what do you need? I can just have Amazon deliver it, or, just a grocery store deliver it. So it's just the taking those moments, of pause, so that you're not overtly working yourself and moving so quickly to the point where you can't even take a single breath for, just for granted. Like, you don't want to take that for granted. So I think, those are just some of the things that, or lessons, if you would, that I've learned and I've gained specifically from this year. And I know that, in a lot of the things that we're doing with our organization, and just kind of leading our teams at the forefront
Yeah.
of this pandemic, and providing these types of essential services, it really takes a lot for people to want to do that. And so, that's why I really do, I give huge amounts of kudos to all of the essential workers who are constantly risking their own health and safety every single day to ensure that the lives and the livelihoods of other people are well attended to. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think regardless, first of all, we're lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Second of all, whether, if you're listening to this, if you're a leader in an organization, you're a leader in your family, you're a leader of your children, you're a leader of yourself. We're all leaders in some way. I think
Hmm.
there's real takeaways about just how we even lead ourselves through
Hmm.
this time that you've shared with us that were really great. So thank you, Maxine. I look forward to speaking with you again in 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you,
Th-
Doug. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you.